This is Smarter San Diego TV.
Millennials and baby boomers alike, they want to be in urban environments right now.
Thank God for the Electoral College vote.
In a 4-hour breakfast, we raised $9,000. So that's something that we take pretty seriously.
And you can't diet your way into being lean and fit. They go together.
In New York City, deciding what's best for the rest of the freaking country.
This is not a market built on a stack of cards. It's a solid foundation.
0%. That is a thumbs up.
Everyone has a life worth telling a story about. And the more adversity that you faced, the deeper your story.
Well, am I going to be okay in it? Like, am I going to be able to walk?
There's just so much creativity in this town that it's hard to hide it.
Well, you have these beliefs, well, what do you do with it?
Our next guests are here fanning the flame for female leadership in San Diego. Please welcome the wonderful owner of the Avenue Home Collective, Melissa Sofia, and her guest, the founder of 1,000,000 Smart Women at Smart Power Academy, Will Marre.
All right, welcome back. Melissa
Hello.
Sofia in the house.
Yes, I love being here.
Amazing to have you, and a very special guest today.
Incredibly special, very inspiring guest today.
Will Marre.
Will Marre.
Will, welcome to the show, my friend.
Great to be here.
The Million Women Movement? Is that what it
Million
is?
Smart Women.
Million Smart Women.
Right.
Okay.
1,000,000 smart women are going to change the world. That's the whole impetus behind that
That's
idea.
the whole idea. And you're a huge advocate for women.
Yeah, women, especially in leadership. That's my field. I've been involved in leadership training development for over 30 years. So most people would recognize my work because I was the guy who actually discovered Stephen Covey when he was a college professor. He's the one who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
That's
so
right.
before we had
I have that book.
a big public company, we just started, he and I and his secretary, and we built that company. And eventually taught millions of people worldwide, 25 million books sold. So it was really, really successful. And I've been doing leadership training ever since my early 30s, working with Stephen.
I have to ask you, because obviously you're advocating on behalf of women, but you're a man. So
I know. I'm so glad you noticed.
Tell us what's up with that.
Well, really what's up with that is I was working with Gap about 4 years ago. And they asked me actually to spend a year, they paid me fortunately, to spend a year studying what we now call a science of leadership. See, before leadership was just the idea of a college professor or a series of college professors come up with good ideas, but there wasn't a lot of really good data that said this kind of behavior, this kind of person makes a good leader, particularly for a large organization. So, but now we have all kinds of data about that. So people do 360-degree surveys, which you may be familiar with. Mm-hmm. And we can really isolate in companies people who consistently create game-changing results or consistently drive innovation. So we can take specific outcomes that you want and say these kinds of leaders do that. And then we use factor analysis to find out what factors really lead to that. So I'm going to tell you something that won't surprise you. When we did this research, we found that most men at higher levels of organizations are called hard power, or they use hard power. Hard power is, I'm going to set goals and hold you accountable. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of like a football coach mentality. And what we found is that those companies were having a really hard time innovating value that people wanted. So what they're good is at executing the same thing over and over again. So if you want a path to failure, just execute the same thing over and over again. And I'm not making this stuff up. 20 years ago, there were 7,000 public companies, and today there's 4,000. So people are literally going out of business by just doing what they did before for less money. So what was going on in the companies that were growing? That's what we wanted to find out. And what was going on was something called strategic collaboration based on customer and workforce empathy. So if I understand what my customer wants, I understand what my workforce wants, and I can get those two people working together, that's when the magic happens. That's when the innovation happens. So it turns out that's why I'm wearing this t-shirt. See what it says?
Will
It turns
work for
out,
meaning.
yeah, it turns out that when people are working for meaning, it activates a whole different part of their brain that really feeds innovation. So what we found out is that this whole area of collaborative innovation is something called soft power, and believe it or not, women have that in massive amounts, much more than men.
I had a feeling he was going to say that. Had a feeling.
Did you?
Yeah.
So I came to advocating women in leadership because of their effectiveness, not because I have an axe to grind or I'm a social activist, although I've become one more because I've seen what this actually happened. The second thing is I've coached lots of women into senior levels of leadership, and I've seen them actually not only save projects, but at least in one case, save a company. So.
Okay, so in your experience, scientifically and experientially, women are better leaders? Would you say that women are better leaders than men?
Well, I'd say the evidence, the scientific evidence says that it is, and this is all measurable now. So Zanger Folkman is a research partner that's done more 360-degree surveys than most companies I've ever heard. They've been in business 30 years. And 2 years ago, they did a cut on the character or the behaviors that make successful leaders if you want growth and profitability, which of course everybody wants. And they looked at every job function. And in every job function, from sales to marketing to finance, women excelled the men. Now, they had no idea this was going to happen. They'd never done a gender split before. There's only one job function that men excelled at: building maintenance. So on that basis, the science would say not so. But in terms of if you want growth and you want innovation, you need to engage women at the very highest levels of organizations in leadership roles of responsibility.
So do you believe there's an equality issue? Does that have anything to do with your movement? Do you think that there's an unjustness going on?
Well, myself being a woman in the business world and growing up as a young woman in a business industry, I have personally felt not necessarily a huge struggle, but just definitely a pressure to prove myself. I have to be smarter, faster, better, stronger, and I have to learn how to work with the situation I'm given at any time. I feel in a greater amount than the men around me, for sure. And I love what Will does because there are so many women out there who are so deserving of the attention and the success that they haven't been able to earn. And I think part of it is a shift in mindset. And he gives us the opportunity to understand what it is, what skills are inside of us that should be recognized and should be utilized more so that we can gain the success that we deserve out in the world. This show is all about making San Diego smarter. So I really wanted to, bring him on here and help us understand, there's so many women's movements going on right now. So, what's the deal with that? There are definitely two sides of it. There's obviously the women who are, would like to see our gender go further and to be recognized. And there's definitely a whole other side who don't necessarily recognize that there's any kind of inequality issue whatsoever. So, it's so important what you're doing.
Well, you laughed when I said that.
Well, yeah.
You chuckled.
It's called implicit or invisible bias, so it's everywhere. So it starts in school. In school, there's researchers that videotape teachers, and what we know that on average, even with female teachers pay attention to and call on boys 66% of the time, girls 33% of the time. So the bias starts very early, and there's a lot of
do you think there's possibly a good reason for that? Is there? I mean, is it possible that the girls are paying attention and the boys aren't? They're just trying to get the boys'
Well, that's a
attention?
really interesting thing. Here's women teachers are a lot less tolerant of girls who act out or talk in class than boys. And there's a mindset, well, boys will be boys. So just think of this. 97% of our criminal population are male. Most crimes that people are locked up to for a long time are crimes of impulse. Men have lots more difficulty with impulse control, yet it's tolerated in school when we know that self-control is one of the biggest markers for success. So the bias is everywhere. The bias has been here for thousands of years, since the dawn of history. And an example of the problem. Here in San Diego, we have lots of tech companies and biotech companies. And the bias against women in those companies is greater on average than other kinds of businesses. Like I worked at Gap, which is a fashion company, has a lot of women. So less bias. Technology companies are traditionally a math and science, what they call STEM-oriented people. So this is what happens. And we know this is what happens because I work with an organization called Women in Technology International, which has over 100,000 members, and they work in these big tech companies. And we know that on average, a woman has to work twice as long and produce twice as much to get a promotion as a man. So a man in a tech company is promoted on average every 18 months, a woman every 36 months. So take that out to the end of the career. A man can make as much as $2 million more in his career. They have the same. They both have PhDs. The woman could have more patents than the man. And the reason there's so much bias is that cultures of organizations are hierarchical, so it's the chain of command kind of thing, and that favors hard power. People who are very goal-oriented and very high accountability are favored in those corporations, so then to be at the top of the corporation. And when I just asked the CEO of a big tech company about a month ago, I said, do you think there's any bias here? And he said, no, it's totally a meritocracy. If you're good, you go to the top. And then we started to do focus groups and research inside the company and found out women feel completely different, that there's a constant bias, and the problem is it starts at what it's called a task level. So let me just explain because it's worthwhile. Here's what happens.
Okay.
Here's what happens. So I've got a job to do, and I'm going to choose between you, Derek, or Melissa. And this is what goes through my mind. So I'm a male manager. I'm saying, gosh, if I just give this to Derek, I'll just explain it to him, and he'll say, yeah! And he'll go off. Melissa's going to have all kinds of questions. And then if I need to give feedback to Derek, he's tough. He's a dude, right? So I can just lay it on, hey, Derek, none of that. Do this. If I try to give feedback to him, I'm just going to open a can of worms. I don't know what's going to happen. So it's just easier for me to ask Derek. Now, if you multiply that times 1,000,000 every day, what happens is you get the important tasks, Melissa gets less important tasks. She gets less feedback, so she progresses less fast. And that's what happens everywhere. That's how it works out.
The science may say that. I could see that. I just want to give you kind of, in my experience, some feedback for you guys. And by the way, I would like to have you back so that we can do an elongated discussion about this on Facebook Live. Maybe we bring in someone else too, like a psychology person or something. I think that would be really, really cool.
Love that.
Melissa, I feel the same pressure you do. So
Right.
for me, like I don't think that's gender-based. Like if you own your own business or if you're out there in the field, like you have to perform. It's just that simple, right? You have to beat the competition. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. I will say this though, I tend to hire women. If you look around, you only see one other guy. And there's a reason for that, because I have, in my experience, had better results having women work for me than men. So I totally get that. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I have noticed, and I think it's interesting, and I would love to know where the data comes in on this, is that I feel like it's more the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Because in all of my years in management, all of my years owning my own business, maybe once, I can't remember, but maybe there was one time where a woman actually came and asked for a raise. But guys ask all the time.
Right.
So it's much more common for
so that's
men
why you
to
hire
come in
women.
And say, "You're hilarious. You're hilarious." No, that's funny. I hope that makes some sort of reel somewhere. That has to be the part of the new open of the show. So it's true. I find that I just find that that women do a better job. I feel like they're more thorough. Mm-hmm. You can count on them more. They're not afraid to work hard or extra or whatever it may take to get the job done. Whereas as men tend to be more lazy. That's been my experience. But I'm just saying from the acceleration standpoint or the move up standpoint, could it be in corporate America that maybe women just aren't pushing for the promotion? They're not making it aware that, hey, I want that management job. I want to excel. I want to do. I think that might be what is more of the problem than just the task-oriented stuff.
It is a problem, but women have a handicap in that men who are aggressive and ambitious, even if they make mistakes, get points in an organization for being aggressive and ambitious. The expectation, our cultural expectation of women, is that women exist to help men achieve men's important goals. And I mean, I know that sounds harsh, but I just want you to think of thousands and thousands of years of culture. And so one of the things that happens when I do women-only training for a specific reason. And in those sessions, what I really spend a lot of time in is, what goals do you have as a woman in terms of your career or in terms of your life? And many women have just not deeply reflected on that. I mean, they've spent their life helping other people achieve their goals. Could have been their kids, could have been their boss. But when you're out of habit of having ambitions for yourself, or they're unclear, you tend not to push yourself forward. You're asking, like, what's the next task I can do? Rather than, hey, Derek, I want a raise and I want more responsibility. I want your chair. You just don't find many women doing that.
But I love what you're saying, because I recognize that in what you do, for sure. I notice that you do hire wonderful women around you. And, you know, I think that times are changing. I think that the world is ready, you know, to really put equality on the forefront. And I believe that, you know, we are growing. I mean, personally, I feel that my generation is full of very strong, smart, incredible women, and I think that we are ready to you know, accept.
Well, I want to jump on what she's saying, because there is a huge cutoff with millennials about all these issues I'm talking about. So when you reach late 30s or 40s, you find in research polls that men prefer to work for men. At somewhere in 32 and below, there's no preference. It's fine. There's an expectation I'm going to work for a woman. So there is a lot more equality in terms, social equality between men and women in the millennial age than in the age just above it. The problem is the world is run by old gray-haired baby boomer dudes.
We're on our way up.
And they're the ones that are clueless, and what we're trying to do is make sure the world's in a place for the millennials to inherit, so that something good and sustainable and beneficial to everyone will be there.
Will, thank you so much for coming in today. I
Great.
really hope you can come back and have a more elongated discussion with us. I think it would be fantastic. Melissa, fantastic job bringing Will in today. And
Thank you.
Your life's work is clear, and I would ask you this question: what is your life's work? That's a big question we all need to ask ourselves. Stick around for more Smarter San Diego TV, where we guarantee to make you smarter than everyone else. Commercial.